Okay, we're going to look at polynomial division. There's two different techniques that we'll look at. We're going to use the same problem for both of them just so you can decide which one you prefer. So the first technique we're going to look at is just doing it like you would a long division problem, like you would have done when you were younger. So I take my terms. Now the important part here is notice that there's no x squared term here. So I need to put a placeholder in. So I'm going to have x minus 3 going into x to the fourth minus 5x cubed plus 0x squared plus 21x plus 6. Without that 0x squared, if you use this method, you're going to tend to get messed up. Okay, now just like you would before, you look at the number here and you say, okay, what do I multiply this by to get this term? Or you're dividing this one, x to the fourth divided by x. So basically I got to think about it. I'm kind of ignoring the minus 3 part right here. So I can say x times x cubed will give me x to the fourth. So above the x cubed term right here, I'm going to put an x cubed. Now I'm going to multiply, just like you would normally. You'd multiply, then you subtract. So I do x to the fourth minus 3x cubed. We're going to subtract. So often what's easiest to do is simply change the signs and then add them. So x to the fourth minus x to the fourth, negative 5x cubed plus 3x cubed gives me negative 2x cubed. Okay, then I'm going to bring down the next term, which is a plus 0x squared. So now I look at the x. X times what will give me negative 2x cubed. That's going to be negative 2x squared. We multiply, so I get negative 2x cubed plus 6x squared. I'm going to change the signs, make this one positive, make this one negative, and add them. So 0x squared plus negative 6x squared gives me negative 6x squared. Then bring down the 21x. Then x times negative 6x will give me negative 6x squared. Then we have negative 6x squared. The negative 6x times negative 3 would be positive 18x. Again, I'm going to change the signs, add these together. The x squareds are going to cancel. 21 minus 18 gives me 3x. And add the plus 6. Multiply this one by 3. And then I get 3x minus 9. Again, we'll change our signs. 6 plus 9 is 15. And that's my remainder. When we have our remainders, we're going to write them as a fraction. So it's 15 over x minus 3. Now, some of you will choose to do this method, which is fine. But it does take up more space than the other method. Second method we're going to use is using generic rectangles. So same problem, but now we're going to look at it from a different perspective. So we're going to build like a grid, and you can kind of keep expanding out this side of the grid if you wanted to, as you fill it in. We just need to get it started and just kind of leave this end as opened up. So I'm going to put x minus 3 off to the side, and I'm going to start with this term right here, and that goes in this spot. Okay, now I'm going to do this idea of reverse multiplication in many ways. I have x times something gives me x to the fourth. Well, that makes this x cubed. So that's how I would have gotten x to the fourth in this spot. Now, I'm going to multiply x cubed times negative 3 gives me negative 3x cubed. And here's the part that takes a little bit more thinking. These terms on this diagonal right here, when I take these two together, have to add up to give me negative 5x cubed. So that's where the thinking on this part goes. But it takes up less space. So I go negative 3x cubed plus something gives me negative 5x cubed. Well, that would be negative 2x cubed. Okay, now I'm going to repeat that process. X times something equals negative 2x cubed. Well, that'd be negative 2x squared. We multiply out, we get 6x squared. Now, these two have to add up to give me no x squareds. So I don't have to worry about the placeholder right now. I just got to be aware there's no x squareds. So I need these guys to cancel out. So this makes this one a negative 6x squared. The negative 6x squared, to get this from, I'm going to take x times negative 6x will give me negative 6x squared. So that's what goes up here. We multiply out, we get 18x. Then my x's, well, they got to add to 21. So 18x plus 3x. Then x times 3 will give me 3x. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. Then for this last one right here, has to add up to my constants, and this is where we're going to get a remainder. So negative 9 plus something is equal to 6. Now watch your signs a little bit because you got to be careful. You could always take it and do 6, take the number here, 6 minus this number to figure out what goes in here. That's going to end up being 15. Just remember that these two have to add up to that term here. So you should always go back and make sure, because that's usually where the error occurs, is with the addition part right here. And they have the same answer. Okay, so now let's look at a couple of other examples. And I'm going to primarily use generic rectangles, which most students tend to use, and they do take up less space. Okay, so watch out when you have something. We have to watch out for when we don't have certain terms, to make sure we have placeholders, and even potentially the order. If I look at this, I've got 7x minus 4x cubed plus 6 over 2x minus 1. Well, the order's wrong. I've got to go in descending order, highest power of x working down. Okay, now I also have a missing spot right here. I have no x squared terms. So I got to be aware of that, particularly if I want to use the long division method. But we're going to use the rectangles because we don't have to worry about it then. So this be negative 4x cubed goes here, and 2x minus 1 on the outside. So it's 2x times something gives me negative 4x cubed. That would be negative 2x squared. The negative 2x squared times negative 1 is 2x squared. So again, no x squared terms. 2x squared plus something has to add up to no x squareds. So that makes this part negative 2x squared. Now I can do 2x times something gives me negative 2x squared. That's going to be just negative x. So be careful again. You can always take this number divided by that if you're trying to figure out what it is. So I get negative x. Negative x times negative 1 is x. X plus something gives me 7x. So that has to be 6x. 2x times 3 will give me 6x. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Final terms is 6, so I'd have to add 9. There's my remainder, and I write my remainder as a fraction. Okay, what if they give it to you as a long division problem? Well, you can use a long division problem right here, except if you do decide it, watch out for missing terms. X to the 4, 3x cubed minus 2x squared. Oh, there's no x's. So I'd have to rewrite it first. But just because they give it to you in the long division format doesn't mean you have to use long division. So I'm still going to use the generic rectangles. Okay, so x plus 3 on the outside. X to the 4th goes here. X times something gives me x to the 4th. That's x cubed. X cubed times 3 gives me 3x cubed. And this is the other one that sometimes messes up students. 3x cubed plus something gives me 3x cubed. So this has to be 0x cubed. And sometimes that just confuses students. So if this is 0x cubed, that means I have x times something gives me 0x cubed. Well, that'd be 0x squared. And I'd like to put this in here because it avoids an issue. It just makes it a little bit easier to keep everything lined up. It's possible to do it without having this one because it's a 0. It just tends to be a little bit easier if you do keep it for right now. So I'll do 0x squared times 3 gives me 0x squared. Now, 0x squared plus something has to give me negative 2x squared. Well, that makes this negative 2x squared. So even though this whole column right here is all zeros, we're keeping our terms lined up. See how they're lined up right here? If I skip this part, then I have negative 2x squared with the 3x cubed. They're not lining up. So you do want to kind of keep that placeholder right here. X times negative 2x will give me negative 2x squared. That gives me negative 6x. I have no x's, so that makes this one 6x. Then 6x, to get 6x from x, I got to multiply by 6. 6 times 3 is 18. 18 plus 18 gives me 0, so there's no remainder on this one. So if I did the long division format, I would have had these terms right here. But it's always a good idea to have your final answer written out. It ends up being x cubed minus 2x plus 6. And that's our final answer.